Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all well. Um, it's 5:15 Greenwich Mean Time, which means it's time for us to discuss the subject of franchise staff recruitment. And before I introduce our guest today, I just wanted to remind everybody about the show and why I do it and what it's all about. So I've been in the franchising world not particularly long, but I want to bring various different experts and various different opinions and discussions to a forum where people can chat freely and we can have a really interesting discussion on various topics. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest for today, Mr. Simon Wise. Wise by name, wise by nature.
I've never heard that actually.
So Simon has been in the world of franchise recruitment and recruitment since 1997. So he's a real expert on the subject of recruitment and the subject of people, how to get the right people, how to nurture and look after people. And it's a subject also that's really close to my heart. You know, as people know, I do a post every Sunday that tries to help anybody who's lost their job or anybody who's looking for a new job. So the subject of recruitment and the subject of people is really important to me. So Simon, great to hear a little bit about you, where you've kind of come from and where you're at, and what your thoughts.
Sure. I mean, look. I've been actually involved in franchising since '97. So I started my life at the British Franchise Association, and I worked my way up to the deputy director there. And 7 years in, I just got the itch, and I wanted to start my own business, and it was a franchise. I was so inspired by the people that I'd met along the way in the journey that I thought, you know what, I'm 32 years old. I've got a young family. I've got things I want to do in my life and look after them properly, etc., etc. I thought, well, it's time I control my own destiny. So I invested in a franchise. I left the BFA. Good job, very secure. But yeah, put it all on the line and started a franchise. It was actually a recruitment franchise in the staffing in the transport sector. It was a brand called Driver Hire, actually, which is still going very strong. And I ran that successfully. I bought a resale, in fact, so it was an existing business. I bought a resale, and I ran that successfully for 7 years. And then come 2013, I took my exit. And then sat there with a blank sheet of paper and thought, well, what can I do now? Well, I love franchising. I'm pretty damn good at recruitment. And I thought, well, let's put the two things together again and say, well, okay, maybe not so much franchisee recruitment, because that's quite a crowded marketplace at the time. I thought, let's look at staff recruitment for franchisors and getting the right people in to the right seats, use my connections, use my knowledge and understanding of franchising and how the relationship works. So I built FranRec in 2013, and we've been in business now for 10 years. And that's all we do. We work in the franchise sector. We support people that are looking to develop and grow their careers in franchising. And we also help franchisors, of course, recruit and strengthen their head office teams. And it's been quite a journey. And the last couple of years, I think it's fair to say that we've been busier than ever, really. So it's a good place to be, for sure.
No, great. No, thank you for that introduction. It's great to sort of hear where you've come from and how you've got to be where you're at. And it's such an important subject, having the right team in place, the right culture, and looking after people as well. It's all very well getting the right person, but it's looking after the right person.
Yeah, 100%. That's so important. And one of the things I picked up on it's looking after your talent, nurturing and looking after your talent, because it's difficult to get the right people. So why not look after the ones you've got, and make sure they're engaged in the business, make sure you've got a strong line of communication with them, and really support them in their endeavours. It's so important. And the number of people that I see and I say, well, why are you looking for a new job? It's just, I'm not being heard. I'm not being listened to. I don't have any career pathway, even for people, some people have said, look, I've only been in this job a year, but it's nothing like that was advertised to me. It's completely different. So there's a fundamental responsibility on the part of all employers, whether it's in franchising or not, is to nurture your talent and to take them with you, and to make sure they're being completely fulfilled in their career, and you're getting the maximum potential from that individual. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. That really resonates with me. Just quickly, I'd just like to quickly say hello to Kelly, who has joined us here on the chat. It's lovely to see Kelly. I've known Kelly for a long while. Actually, it feels like a long while. It's not a long while, but we've done some LinkedIn lives together. Her show, The Awesome Journey, is after this show at 6:11, so it's great for Kelly to join us. She's a marketing expert, and looking forward to her views on people and recruitment. Let me see if I can practice putting that up on the screen. Look, there you go. Look, there it is. No, that's really interesting. And I think one of the things that resonated with me when you were talking there is not being heard as well. And I think that's what people want. They want a voice. They want to be heard. They want their opinions to matter. And I think also what matters to one person is different to what matters to someone else. Mm-hmm. I speak to potential franchisees about staff and getting the right people and trying to hang on to the right people. Mm-hmm. And I said it's about understanding people, asking that second question, trying to realize what's important for one person and what's not important for that person, or what drives them.
Yeah.
I think in our industry, and I think particularly in the sort of the hospitality world, we do have, I guess, we have to rely on staff that are maybe a little bit temporary, that are looking for a job, perhaps while they're at university or something like that. But even so, the options are wide for people when they are looking for that type of job. So you've got to make it fun. You've got to make it inclusive. You've got to make it rewarding. You've got to thank people as well.
100%. I think you've also got to recognise, I've come from the agency staffing background as well. There are people that choose that way of life, that because they enjoy the variety. They don't, it's not just the 9 to 5 that they're stuck in. They can, as an agency worker, they can get to work with lots of different people. And I think it's incumbent on the employer to respect that as well, and just to say, well, okay, you're not somebody who can't get a full-time job. You're perhaps somebody that enjoys that variety and doing something different. It's really important, definitely important. I mean, having the right people in your business can make or break you. It really can. And it is, I've run my own business and I don't employ anybody at the moment, but in my past I have, and that was a significant factor in the success of our business, and having the right people in the right seats, for sure. And it's tough, every time you have to go into the marketplace and replace somebody or recruit somebody new. It's time, it's effort, it's money, so it's like franchising, isn't it? Everybody's knocking themselves out to sell new franchises to new people, but have you looked inward? Have you looked inside the network? And is there an existing franchisee that maybe could take on an additional territory? So you're maximizing and you're utilizing the talent you have within the business already. And I see that in the same way as employees. Make sure that you're taking them forward and giving them an opportunity to express themselves and to grow within the business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a really valid point about trying to nurture the talent that you've got, because when you put someone into any role, there's a degree of training, and some roles have much more training to really understand the business. And you want to be able to keep those people, not just because it's the right thing to do to nurture and keep people happy in their roles, but also because it has a cost for a franchisor to keep replacing staff if the system isn't right to keep them.
Well, there's two costs. There's the monetary cost, and there's also the destabilizing factor for your franchisees as well. You know, if they see the individuals keep changing, those people that are at the sharp end, the coalface, are constantly changing and changing. There's no longevity there. There's no opportunity to build a relationship with, say, for example, the frontline franchise support manager, which is so important. If you're going to get to understand a franchisee, where they're on their journey and how you can help them, you've got to have that longevity in there as well. So, yeah, it hits home on lots of different points. But for me, it all goes back to the recruitment process, the way in which you attract the talent. And there's a lot more to it than just sticking an advert on a job board and then being pleased that you've got 15, 20 CVs to go through. It's about attracting the right sort of people and crafting your job ad or your job spec to make sure that you are really focusing on the key attributes that you're looking for. And values and culture really are very much the top of the pile right now. And they've always been, to be fair. We've just had them, in the background. But with COVID and that really gave a chance for a lot of businesses to hit the reset button and really say, look, have we really got the right people in the right seats here? And again, that's where we as a business has grown and benefited from, because there's been a process where people are saying, well, no, we haven't got the right people, so we need to go in and have a look at it and start building the team with a different outlook.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, I think that's one really fascinating question, and one that probably there isn't an easy answer to. But how do you find that right person for the job? And you were starting to answer that there. I think if you truly look at what your values are as a company, and and what culture you're trying to create, and rather than that just being part of a PowerPoint presentation that you talk about, if you really make that part of your culture, if it goes top down, and you really understand how those values translate into every role within your organization.
Yeah, it works because it means you attract the right people, and they will stay with you. The number of people that I speak to on my journey that I'm saying, well, look, this role pays X more than you're earning at the moment. They say, well, Simon, it's not about the money. This is a place I love working. I get so much satisfaction from working with these people. I've got that loyalty. I've got that friendship. And yes, I mean, we recruit a lot more now on cultures and values, and making sure that they are the right fit for the company, and making sure the company can meet the expectations of the candidate as well. So, for example, if you put in the job ad, excellent career prospects, that attracts people to a role. Then make sure you're fulfilling the promise, that there are excellent career prospects, and those are mapped out at the very start, so the individual's on a journey and they can map that journey with the milestones that they're expecting. So more of a science, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's really interesting as well, what you say, because I do a post every Sunday to help people that have lost their job or are in between jobs, because I've been in that position in the past. And I think you make some really interesting points. It's a little bit like people put things on a CV, and that's got to be at least translatable into real life and into a real situation. But just the same as when somebody puts something on a job advert, like you say, it's got to come true, because those words actually mean something.
Correct. It's incumbent on both parties to make sure that the fit is right, and that's what I say to anybody. When we send candidates forward for interview, we give them some coaching, we give them some guidance, we give them an aid memoir that they can look through, but ultimately, and what I say to them is, yes, at the end of the day, you're also there to make sure that it's right for you as well, that the people are right and the progression is right and what you're looking for. And it's very difficult, and it's very, very disheartening for a lot of people, for sure, if they're looking at applying for lots and lots of different roles and they're not getting interviews, and you become very demoralized and very down. And it's a very frustrating process, for sure. And I think the other frustrating process, again, and this is something that I would flag up, if if somebody is taking the time to come and see you and give you an interview and they're not right for you, give them some feedback and tell them why they're not right for you. And that will really help them on their next application. So it has to be a positive and useful experience, even if at the end of it doesn't lead to a job offer. The fact is you've got to guide people and help them in that process as well.
I think that's really valid as well, because one of the worst things that when you're in that situation of looking for a new role is when you don't hear anything back after you've had an interview, even. And that is a common problem that absolutely shouldn't be there.
Well, it drives you nuts, doesn't it? Let's be quite honest, because your life is on hold until you get that phone call or that email to say, look, yes, we'd like to take you on, or it isn't. So, you try and do as much as you can really to make sure that people get good feedback and timely feedback. Look, there are some sectors of industry, education, local government, for example, that you go for an interview on a Monday, you'll get the answer on the Monday. You're not left dangling for a couple of weeks. You get the answer straight away, and I think that's really important because people need to get on with their lives and learn how they've done, and if they haven't done quite right, then give them time to adjust and prepare themselves for the next journey.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A question that I had for you, which I'm really interested in your answer, in terms of sort of frontline staff.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about people who work sort of the day to day and really sort of make all of these businesses work, whatever that business is. It's always a challenge getting those people, getting the right people, keeping those people enthused. And I think, in franchising, it's absolutely a challenge, whether it be in hospitality or whether it be in other industries, to get the right people and to keep those people happy in their job. What's your sort of take on that, and how do you get those right people and how do you keep them happy?
Well, it starts, it's really important, and as I said, it all starts from the first process of recruiting those individuals. Make sure that you know exactly what you want, and make sure you recruit the people that are right for the business. Look, they might not have all of the skills you're looking for, but if they've got the right attitude, the right motivation, they can really align themselves to what you do, and they're showing a real passion and an empathy for what you do as a business. Then for me, that is one of the most important things. Skills and can be taught, operations or whatever it may be, can be taught through training and what have you. But the individual's got to have that real drive and understanding and real click with what you're doing as a business. And I think that leads on to everything really. Look, it's like that, the same thing with franchisee recruitment, isn't it? If you recruit the first person that's waving a checkbook at you, the chances are 9 times out of 10 it will be a disaster. But if you take your time and recruit people that are right for the business and will fit and understand what you're doing and show real connection, then that will be a very prosperous and happy business relationship. But yeah, it goes back to, again, transparency, what your intentions are, being honest, and finding out what people really want. If they're looking to be, promoted within 2 years, and they want their salary to be X, and they want to be traveling all around the world doing X, Y, and Z, and that's not achievable within the job, then they have to know about that. There's no point taking somebody on just for here right now. You've got to think about that. So it's just about selection and I guess common sense, really, isn't it? It's about getting the right match and getting the right people that you can work with. And how do you keep them with you? Well, you've got a communication, engagement, employee engagement is massive. How many times as an employee have you been in a situation where you're chasing your boss to do the review that you were due, 3 months ago? And hasn't happened yet. So, we'll give you a 6-month performance review, which happens every 6 months. And just simple things like that, really, to engage with the employees and keep your promises and give them an opportunity to have an input on ideas and business and what have you. But really just simple things in life like communication, respect, and making sure that you're keeping your promises and making sure you know what motivates them, your employees. And some of the best companies that I work with, for sure, I mean, they've got brilliant a record of keeping franchise staff in the business, because they love what they do, and equally they're on a journey, and they know what that journey is, and they're being fulfilled, not just financially, but with all aspects of that particular role, and their career is being developed, and they've got a real interest in the business, and they take some ownership of that as well.
I think you've made some really, really good points there. I think they're really valid as well, because the various elements that attract people to a role and keep them to in the role. When you look at the financial element of it, if you give somebody a pay rise, it has an effect, but it only has a temporary effect. The other things have got to be right as well. Communication, being heard, I think is so valid. Being appreciated. I think even to be told that you're doing a good job, if you are, but to be told you're doing a good job, it's very, very powerful to say that to somebody. Say, look, I think you're just doing a fantastic job here. I'm really impressed with what you're doing. I'd like to hear your ideas. But I think the other thing, you talked about communication and listening to people and for them to be heard. I think it's equally important that they see that something is happening with something they say as well. They come up with an idea, whether that be a franchisee or whether that be a member of staff. It's just really important that something happens after the meeting or after the suggestion, even if it's not quite right at the time. Even if you say, well, look, that's a great suggestion, but we're not quite ready for that yet. It might not fit right now, but we like it, and and this is when we're going to do it. I think people need that time scale in what they're doing, and to know they've been heard. It's but it's really tricky. I mean, in terms of sort of attracting those first that sort of first point, would you go the sort of traditional route of using the type of people like Indeed and all these sorts of things for those type of roles?
It's difficult. I don't use a lot of job boards when I'm looking for franchise talent. We don't traditionally, there's not a lot of success, and to be fair, a lot of the clients that we have over the years have come to us because they're not getting the quality through the job boards. They're too generic, and I think what they're looking for is a bit what's under the surface, I guess, in terms of franchising, because it's so unique, isn't it, about the relationship between franchisor and franchisee. So no, I don't find a lot of use. I don't use job boards, for example, when we're looking at filling a role. We have our connections, a database of franchise professionals that we work with, that we're continually communicating with and helping them progress their careers. We do a lot of headhunting as well. Again, utilizing what we know about the franchise industry, what we know about the business and the type of people that work with the franchisor, then we can hone those skills and identify and approach people directly. So in franchising, I'm only saying this about franchising, I don't particularly find the job boards very, very useful at all.
Even for those sort of frontline staff?
Look, it depends, doesn't it? I guess if you're on the franchisee side of things, if you're looking for restaurant staff, for example, or kitchen staff or something, yes, yeah, I'm saying. I mean, our role is mainly sort of franchisor, qualified franchise professionals that perform, where it be a franchisee recruitment role or a franchisee support role or marketing or finance. It's a bit more targeted than a sort of a shotgun approach. But for sure, the platforms that are out there and available are vitally important and are useful for recruiting for those more, dare I say it, sort of more generic skills and experience. They're useful. But equally, you can become a little bit complacent, if you don't put the work and effort into describing exactly what you're looking for. When you put the advert up, make sure that people know exactly who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. And that's really, really important to have that, to do the preparation, the groundwork, and then put it up on the on the platform to encourage people to apply.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point as well. The complacency part of it on both sides. I think that, again, when you're looking to recruit multiple roles that are of that nature that you were talking about just then, where you need to get a lot of staff to fill a restaurant, or you've got drivers or whatever, you need quite multiple staff. And if you're just putting out a generic advert, it's perhaps not going to then attract some really interesting people to it. And I think, again, if you're looking and you're on one of these job boards and you're just clicking apply to 500 jobs because you can, and you've already filled in your details, that response that you're giving to the potential employer is going to feel quite generic.
And you know what? It's also, again, it's very disheartening as well, isn't it? And I have this conversation with people. I say, well, look, what you can do, you can reduce the stress by making sure you're only applying for jobs that you're qualified for and you can actually do, and you've got a genuine interest, and that you can really put yourself across an interview with confidence. There's a lot of people just literally, satisfy themselves that they've applied for 500 jobs this week, and that sort of takes a bit of pressure off. And then when all the the rejection letters come in, and they get completely disheartened. But I mean, it's like everything, isn't it? If you apply for 10 jobs that you can do, and you've got the right skills, the right experience, the right aptitude, then that's better than just shotgunning 500 roles, hoping something's going to stick. There's a lot that you can do as well when you are looking for work, and being realistic as well. A lot of people, say, for example, will send the same CV in for every single job that they apply for without thinking about tailoring it, getting that first initial paragraph absolutely on point, which is going to encourage that individual to read through the rest of it. So there's a lot there is a lot you can do.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. If you're from the perspective of looking for a job, then you're yes, it's better to spend a day doing 10 applications that you do really well. And like you say, that you're going to have a good chance of getting those jobs, and you can sort of see yourself in that interview, and you can see yourself, and you research the companies, and you try all sorts of different. I mean, what's your view on sort of trying different approaches, as a employee to to talk to the right people within a job? I've heard lots of stories of people just not being heard. We've spoken about that today already, that they just can't get through, and I think it's because they're using this shotgun approach. They're not bespoke, and I think this runs both ways as well. So I think, as franchisors, when we're either looking for new team members, or when we're looking for new franchisees, or when we're helping our franchisees look for new team members, the same thing applies, that we need to translate the values. You need to be honest about what the job is and where it can go. Encourage that candidate to be honest about what it is that they want to do. They might say, well, look, I'm at university and I need the job for the next 6 months. Well, that's great to hear, because at least what's what. And it might be that flexibility is one of the keys for them, because they need to they need to be able to work different hours each week. It's tricky when you're doing rotas, but it might be the key to that.
Absolutely agree. And there are certain things you need to be doing as well. I mean, there are a lot of people that try to hide or mask jobs that haven't worked out. They've only been there for 6 months, so they put it down as a consultancy position. It didn't work. So just be honest and upfront and open, because if you're not, then it could come back and bite you on the backside. The number of times you see that on the CV, consultant or fixed term contract and everything else, you think, hang on, let's be completely honest. Look, if you want to find out something about somebody and their networks and what have you, you can do that very easily, can't you? We're using social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever it may be. So consistency and honesty is very much the key to it, really. And there's it's yeah, I think I forgot what I was going to say, to be honest with you. I'm so sorry. I think there's honesty for you, but yeah, it's exactly that. It's just making sure that you look. How many people do I see, for example, that they send me a CV, and then you look at their LinkedIn profile, and it's completely different. You know, there's jobs in there that are not on the LinkedIn profile, that are on the CV. So there are certain things you can do just to take away that element of doubt, you know, from the mind of any employer. You know, the biggest concern that any employer is that, you know, is this person going to be reliable? Are they who they are saying they are? You know, do they have the skills and experience and the relevant training? And, you know, so you need to there are certain things you need to do, and honesty and openness and is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the honesty part of it, because in the world we live in with social media, it's very easy to see who somebody is. I also think that was very valid what you said earlier on about that skills can be taught, but sort of values, who somebody is. You know, if you speak to somebody and really find out just about who they are as a character,
yeah.
And whether that sits well.
Yeah, and think about that as you know, in the interview process as well. You know, you've got to allow yourself a time to try and get to know somebody. You know, let's talk about the job and what you're going to be doing, but tell me about yourself. You know, what do you enjoy doing? What are your aspirations? What are your motivations? And I encourage all of my clients, when they're putting together the interview process, to make the first one quite informal, just like we're doing here, you know, on a Zoom call. Have a chat with them. Just say, look, we can talk about the role a bit more in detail, but I want to find out a little bit more about you. Tell me about yourself. And I think that's a really important part of the process before we start getting more formal and, you know, you start to wear your polished shoes and doing your PowerPoint presentations and things like that. Get to the meat and potatoes and tell me about yourself. And I think that's a very valid part of the process for sure.
I think it is as well. I think things have got a little less formal as well. You know, often interviews, even for senior roles, are in informal settings with informal dress. And that's because you're trying to get to the real person.
Yeah.
You know, I think hopefully long gone are the days where, you know, you're sort of sitting down with a suit being asked what your strengths and weaknesses are.
No, sell me this pen.
Yeah. I wanted that one in the past.
Look, and it all goes back to what we started to talk about. It's getting the right people, and when you've got the right people, to keep hold of them, you know, and that's so important. And it starts from there, you know. And there's so many, you know, in franchising, there's so many different facets of franchising, whether it's franchisee recruitment or whether you're recruiting, you know, support staff to work with your franchisees. You know, longevity is so important there as well. So it all really comes back into that central point. But again, a lot more time and effort needs to be put into the recruitment process for sure. And what I say to franchisors that I work with is give yourself enough time as well for the recruitment process. Allocate time in your schedule to see people and to speak to people. Don't make it a rushed, you know, thing that you've got a great candidate but all of a sudden it's 2 weeks before you can actually see them. You know, make time for the process. And give yourself as much time as possible. You don't have to be with somebody for an hour and a half for the first interview to make it a good interview. You know, they can get across what they need to get across in half an hour, you know, for that first meeting, whatever. So, you know, a common sense approach really, I guess, but it's all fundamentals, getting the right people into the business.
Yeah, I think that's quickly before I touch on what you've just said there, I've got to say hello to Mr. Don Cohen, who has popped by to say hello, because Don, another great guy, he has a show before this one.
Okay.
It's called Hour of Empower. It's well worth watching. I've been on the show, but I get plenty of value from the show. And he's a chap of considerable experience. So anybody who watches this, I would definitely recommend checking out both Don and Kelly's shows. But yeah, what you said there, which I found very interesting, is making time for the process on both sides. And time is a really interesting thing certainly in an interview situation, because it's often a perceived thing that if an interview is very short, it hasn't gone very well.
Mm.
And that's not always the case. Like you say, that early interview, I can pretty much get the feel of a person very quickly when I speak to them, and I think most interviewers are the same. They just get a feel for somebody and their values, in that informal chat, which is so much more valid than a set of predetermined questions. Just quickly, as we're sort of coming to the latter part of this, I'm experimenting with doing something. LinkedIn provides something called collaborative articles. Now, collaborative articles are a series of AI produced articles of which they're looking for real input from people within specific industries. Now, if anybody sees a top voice badge on somebody's profile, that's because they've contributed towards a collaborative article. The way I looked at these collaborative articles is they're only truly collaborative if I collaborate with somebody to put something in there. So I just wanted to share the screen and see what your thoughts are on this particular subject. So this is a collaborative article that is titled, "How Can Your Franchise Staff Learn and Grow Continuously?" And this is the part that it would be interesting to discuss. So it says, choose the right methods. And I think it's really valid because I think that people have different ways to learn. It says the next step is to choose the most suitable and effective learning methods for your franchise staff. Depending on your budget, time, and resources, you can opt for different types of learning, such as online courses, webinars, workshops, coaching, mentoring, peer-to-peer learning, or self-directed learning, which I'm not even sure what that is, but you can also mix and match different methods to create a blended approach that caters for different learning styles and preferences. What's your sort of thought on that?
I think the last part of that is the most important. A blended learning approach that caters to different styles of learning preferences. That's so important. We're not all the same. I mean, there are. I used to hate those courses where you'd go onto them and then you'd have somebody standing at the front and just giving you information download. Whereas the ones that you were allowed to interact a lot more with your fellow delegates and talk about a problem and collectively come up with a solution were a lot more valuable, and you could take ownership for them as well. That's just me, but I mean there are other people that prefer the information download. So I think it's got to be a blended approach that caters for different learning styles and preferences. 100%. It's not one size fits all, is it?
No, it definitely isn't. I mean, when somebody is learning to do something, is there a particular method that you think is effective, or do you that blended approach of all of those things?
I mean,
it depends on the individual.
If it's a manual process, if it's, say, for example, you're a landscape gardener that's working for a franchise grounds maintenance, and you need to you've got to learn how to operate the machinery, isn't you? That's very much a hands-on demonstration of doing it. You learn by example. So I guess it depends very much on the industry and the skills you're looking to impart on the individual. In terms of leadership, coaching, and mentoring, a lot of that is all about leading by example and learning about different styles from people demonstrating it to you on a one-to-one basis, and sitting in on meetings and interviews and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've gone through, as I'm sure most of us had, various different training seminars, and it's always good if these things are mixed up a little bit, have things to kind of break up the talking part of it. The show that I do with Don Cohen, who was here on the comments, I often bring in a prop, and the reason that I do that is partly for the fun, but also because it breaks up the rhythm and it's something different and it's something interesting. It is visual rather than talking.
Yeah, there's different things, isn't there? There are certain, the learning depends on what you're trying to achieve. I said if it's operating a machinery, then there are certain things you have to do, and there isn't much deviation around that. But if you're trying to teach somebody how to mentor, how to coach somebody, then there are softer skills involved in there as well, and other ways of doing it. I started my life in the financial services industry, and part of the training there was role plays, and they were brilliant, really useful. It wasn't all classroom based. It was role plays in different scenarios, and those are the ones that have always stayed longest in my in my mind.
That's really interesting what you say there about how long it stays in your mind. Just quickly before we discuss that, so what I've done with this collaborative article, and which is what I'm hopefully going to do each week, is I've added a summary there of what you have said, and I've put your name on there. Now, if anybody comments when we put this up as a YouTube or when we do YouTube shorts afterwards, I'm hoping to add some more contributions from other people, but I'm going to stop sharing that now. I need to get back to what you said about role plays, because I have definite experiences of role plays, and I'm not sure if they're positive or not. When I was at college, we had to do them, and they were filmed, and I was absolutely terrified. And I remember one poor girl just completely froze and just didn't know what to say. She was being filmed. We weren't allowed to help her because it was being assessed, and it was awful. But I remember it. And I remember the other role plays that that I've had to do. I think as you get older, it perhaps gets easier. But I think sometimes when it's like using scripts and not using scripts. If you don't use a script and if you just have a subject to talk about, you can just talk freely. But a script, you've got to remember it, and it adds pressure and it stops you being natural.
And I think that's really, really important. And then getting back to the scenario, I want one of the last piece of advice I give to anybody, any of my candidates are going to go for interviews, is be yourself. Don't try and be anything you're not. Be yourself. And I think that's that's what hopefully they take that on board. And again, there's nothing worse than trying to be something you're not in an interview situation. This is me. I can't do anything to change that. You either want me for who I am or you don't. It's as simple as that. So
because you can't keep that pretense up anyway. If you're not who you are at an interview, then you're either not going to get through the interview process, or you're not going to be staying long in the job, because
and it will drive you nuts as well, because you'd be completely stressed out about letting the car
go.
This is who I really am. But no, you know what? It's all about everything we talk about is not, you don't have to have an MBA or whatever it is in philosophy or whatever, I don't know. But it's common sense, and it's just thinking about that. And we try and encourage that for anybody that's going for a job as well, and make sure it's the right role that you're applying for first of all, and you're in an environment where you can talk confidently. An example being, particularly in franchising roles that we on the franchisor side, they're very competency-based driven. For an example, we do a lot of work for franchisors recruiting frontline franchisee support staff. And they want to have the candidate be able to demonstrate that they've got experience supporting franchisees at whatever stage they're on that franchisee life cycle. So the competency-based questions become really relevant. Tell me about a time when you worked with a franchisee that was underperforming and you helped them turn the business around and get them back on track again. All those sorts of things. So the point I'm trying to make is if you apply for a role, make sure you've got some good experience and you can bring out some of those nuggets and examples, because that's what people are going to want to hear. I've worked in franchising and recruitment all my life. I wouldn't know the first thing about brain surgery, so I wouldn't even attempt to try and talk about it and share my experience with it. But I can tell you about franchising, and I can give you some really nice stories and anecdotal stories that will give you the confidence that I know what I'm talking about.
No, I think that's really valid. And when you were saying about brain surgery, it just reminded me of a Mitchell and Webb sketch. I don't know if you've seen it, but
no, I've got the same hairline as David Mitchell, though.
But yeah, I think that's really valid stuff that you said. Just very quickly, there's somebody who I'll just put up there, a chap called Kevin. You know Kevin, yeah?
Yeah, he does a lot of really good work with franchisors on video and presentation.
Yeah, so I wanted to just quickly recognise Kevin before we sort of conclude things, because I've got a meeting with him because he's a bit of an expert on video and all of the things that are really important to try and promote whatever you're doing in franchising, whether it's recruiting staff or whether it's trying to highlight something you're doing in marketing. Having good video is really important. So I'm really looking forward to my chat with Kevin. As I say, we're sort of coming to the end, but just to sort of get your final thoughts, and also if there was some interesting questions that you might ask a potential employee, or what are perhaps the big questions that you should ask on this subject?
I think it's just you want to know what their ambition is, what's their motivation, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what puts fire in their belly, what are they passionate about, because that will translate into their working environment. I think that's get to the meat and potatoes, find out what these people are really all about, from an employer's point of view. But no, just to wheel it back, I would encourage anybody that's looking at interviewing for a role is to try not to get everything done in one meeting. Look at maybe a 1, a 2 or 3 stage process, but make sure you have an opportunity and you set about some time to find out about what makes that individual tick on a one-to-one basis. Before you dive into all the intricacies of the role and the housekeeping, etc. Get them to tell you about yourself, and get them to tell you what they really like and what they enjoy doing and their personality, because that will tell you a lot about whether they're going to fit into the organization and whether this is somebody you could see staying with you for a while and developing and growing in your business.
That's absolutely fantastic, brilliant stuff, and really valuable. And I hope that when people see the video, it's going to go onto YouTube and be produced in various other different ways. But I hope people get some real value from it, because I certainly have, and it's been a real pleasure chatting to you today, Simon. Thank you so much for your time and for those valuable contributions. It's been really good.
Harvey, thank you very much for the opportunity. I know I talk too much and I do apologize, but I love franchising and I love recruitment as well, and any opportunity to talk about both is very welcome for me.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. That's it for today. We'll be back next Tuesday on a live, and all of these can be seen at your leisure on various different platforms that I will advertise. So until we meet again, take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.